Uh-oh. Uh-oh. I like the sound of that. I feel like I might dance. What is this? Let me ask you a question. Is it racist to count how many black people are at the Kentucky Derby? No, right? I didn't think so. I see a lot of white people dressed funny, acting silly, so I start counting black people. Nothing wrong with that. I always take notice of the ratio of black people to white people. I like to keep it around 70-30. What do you mean, who's the 70? If you're asking that, maybe you're racist.
Now what you hear is not a test. I'm a rapping to be. And me, the crew, and my friends are gonna try to move your feet. See, I am Wonder Mike, and I'd like to say hello to the black, to the white, the red, and the brown, to the purple and yellow. But first, I gotta
Come on.
bang bang, a boogie to the boogie, so up jump the boogie to the bang bang boogie. Let's rock. You don't stop, you rock the riddle that'll make your body rock. Real soul.
Come on, dance. I'm gonna let it run. I can't let the whole song run. You know how long this song is. It's hard to talk over this, though. Seriously, though, let me ask you a question. I was in a retail store a few days ago, just finishing up some work. They were just opening up. They had just opened up. And in walks a young man. Now, trust me, you could tell he was young, maybe 18 to 21. He had on a hoodie. But it was totally pulled tight around his head, and he had on a big white mask. Now, I'm telling you, all you could see of his face was his eyes, and barely that. I said, uh-oh, this guy's about to rob this place. Now, I didn't want to stereotype. I didn't want to be stereotypical. But, the problem was he was dressed exactly as all the people I have been seeing clips of robbing retail stores on the internet. Hood pulled all the way down tight, mask. He had the exact uniform of a smash and grabber. I didn't know what to do. Should I tell the manager? Does that make me racist? I'm not, but this guy was even wandering around the store as if he was about to rob the place. No, listen, just to prove. Okay, since you asked, yeah, he was a young black man. But just a couple of years ago, I was outside a restaurant waiting for a seat with other people, standing there waiting to go in, and I see a young white guy with a shaved head, dressed in camouflage, holding a backpack. Come on. Clearly, this guy's about to shoot up the restaurant. I'm not trying to get shot because I want to give people the benefit of the doubt. Things are too crazy out there. The only thing that kept me from leaving the restaurant is the kid looked like he was with his family. So I said, okay, well, he's probably not going to stick up the place or, shoot up the place. So I left that one alone. Oh, the other kid? Did he rob the retail store? How should I know? I left. I'm not trying to be a hero. No, I'm kidding. No, he didn't rob the place. He brought what he wanted, and then he left. Probably had that mask on because he was trying to be thoughtful of people around him.
Hit it to the hip hip hop, and you don't stop the rocket to the bang bang boogie. Say up jump the boogie, the rhythm to the boogie to beat. Skilly bebop, we rock Scooby Doo. Well, guess what? America, we love you because you rock and a roll with us so much so you could rock till you're 101 years old. I don't mean to brag, I don't mean to boast, but we're like hot butter on our breakfast toast. So rock it out, a baby bubba to the boogie, the bang bang, the boogie to the beat so unique. Come on, everybody, and dance to the beat.
Man, that is good stuff right there. That's a good song. You see what I did there? So I softened up the blow of discussing abortion by starting off with some offensive racism talk. You see what I did there? You see how I did that? Now we can smoothly transition into a discussion on abortion. You're welcome. Now, seriously, I didn't even want to have this discussion. I don't want to talk about abortion. I really don't. Not only because I'm a man, and I know men should weigh in, but at the same time, I was just listening to a show where a golf commentator was talking to a female golfer, and she explained she was having back problems because it was that time of the month. That's what she said to the guy interviewing her. And just like the guy interviewing her, and probably 99% of guys out there, I said, back problems? What the heck's that got to do with the time of the month? And I grew up surrounded by women. So, yeah, guys do not know a whole lot about women's bodies and probably should keep their comments to a minimum. So I didn't really want to have this discussion, but here we are. Here it goes. First, let's all agree the Supreme Court leak is a major issue. A major issue. I realize Supreme Court opinions are not classified state secrets, but this is the Supreme Court. To me, this is as impactful as if someone had leaked classified documents out of the Pentagon to essentially a political website. I mean, come on, isn't Politico kind of just a political website? I mean, they're not a news agency like ABC or CBS. They're a political website. I know a lot of people hold Politico in high regard, but they're a political news website. And Politico must have held the person or persons who leaked this information in great confidence because they didn't appear to spend a whole lot of time or effort verifying the authenticity of the opinion. Maybe you give a call to John Roberts or Justice Alito for comment prior to the release, but I don't think they did any of that. So they obviously felt like the person that was giving this to them was very reliable and therefore very high up in the Supreme Court. So I'm not going to belabor the point, but it's a major, major issue that this information was leaked out of the Supreme Court. This is not some hero whistleblower telling us information that was going to be concealed from us, that was going to be kept from us. It's a draft of a Supreme Court opinion we were all going to see in a couple of months. It really didn't need to be leaked. Someone just wanted to leak it. That being said, let's be clear on what's going on, because you can't always trust the media for that, apparently. They seem to have figured out to stop saying overturning Roe versus Wade would outlaw abortion. That seemed to be what everyone ran with on day one. This draft opinion overturning Roe versus Wade, making abortion illegal. No, prior to Roe versus Wade, abortion was not illegal in all of the U.S. It was at the discretion of the states, so this would be a return to that. Let's listen to this clip to get some of the nuts and bolts of the argument.
It's what pro-life activists have hoped for and what pro-choice advocates fear. A case before the Supreme Court today that could potentially undo Roe v. Wade, the 1973 decision that legalized abortion in the U.S. At issue, a 2018 Mississippi law to ban most abortions at 15 weeks of pregnancy, which lower courts ruled violates a woman's rights.
It is indeed perhaps the most consequential abortion case in decades.
Jonathan Turley is a George Washington University law professor, a court and constitution expert, and Fox News contributor.
This case, for those who oppose Roe v. Wade, has all of the elements of a Roe killing case. That doesn't mean it'll happen. But while people often in the past have exaggerated the impact of or the potential impact of past cases, this is the real McCoy. If there's a majority of justices that disagree with Roe, Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization is exactly what they wanted. A lot of people misunderstand that after Roe, you had the decision in Casey, which basically gutted Roe. What it kept was the essential recognition in Roe of the protected right to an abortion. But it dispensed with the whole trimester framing that Justice Blackmun created in Roe. And it replaced instead this standard, which is rather fluid, of states not imposing undue burdens on this right. Now, that has led to a great deal of litigation as to what constitutes undue burden. And much of the attention is along this line called viability, that the idea is that states were presumed to be barred from substantial limitations on abortion pre-viability. And then after viability, the ability of states to legislate increases. That line could be at issue here. Even if the court does not overturn Roe and Casey, it could change the standard to allow states to have more leeway in legislating in the area of reproductive rights.
So that's a pretty good clip. It explains a lot, and there's a lot of information there. It was from 5 months ago, which I think is better because there isn't as much politics in that discussion. And I'll give you the name of the clip. What was the name of that clip? I found it on YouTube. It's Is the End Near for Roe v. Wade, Fox News Rundown. So it actually was a pretty fair discussion, about just the nuts and bolts of the case, of this Dobbs case, which is the case that this opinion is based on. And like I said, because it's from 5 months ago, before this opinion was leaked, they can just have a good discussion about what does this all mean and what could happen as a result of this Dobbs case, and learn about this other case, I forget what the name of it was, that came after Roe in 1973, that essentially gutted Roe, because not a lot is talked about that case. That's hardly ever mentioned. So it's good to hear discussion like that because it kind of puts it more in a context of it's not just, is it legal? Isn't it legal? Is it right? Is it wrong? Is it constitutional? Is it not constitutional? It gives you the detail about what the nuance of the argument is really about. And I know there are people who say there is no nuance to this argument here, and some of the things in the Alito opinion are just ridiculous. Some of the things that he references and he cites and he uses as his reasons for his opinion, some people find those things to be a little ridiculous. But at the same time, I thought it was a good clip to hear. But let me talk about what I say about some people not seeing any nuance to this argument. Here's what I say about that. We have to understand abortion is unlike any other issue, bar none. Bar none. Abortion is not like any other issue. It's not like guns. It's not like immigration. It's not like gay rights. Nothing. They call these things wage issues. Abortion is a sledgehammer issue. It doesn't separate people. It slams people apart. On guns, you can find common ground. On background checks, on bump stocks, on mental health. There are people who have no problem saying, yeah, maybe if somebody can't get on an airplane, if they're on a no-fly list, maybe they shouldn't have a gun. You can find Second Amendment people who would agree with that. On immigration, you can find common ground on dreamers, on immigrants who serve in the military, undocumented people who serve in the military, people who come to this country and contribute. You can find common ground on that, even on gay rights. People have come around somewhat on gay marriage. There's still a long way to go, but things have gotten better on gay marriage, on gay rights. Not abortion. In 50 years since Roe, not on abortion. There is no common ground to be found. The people in the media who are pro-choice, the people on social media who are pro-choice can continue to make all the same arguments I've heard a million times. Abortions will still happen. It will just be less safe. If you're pro-life, why are you pro-death penalty? You want to force these women to have babies, but you won't do anything to help after they have the babies. Do you really want to force a 13-year-old girl who was raped by a relative to carry the baby? The list goes on. You can come up with all the questions, all the statements, all the challenges that you want to someone who is pro-life, and the answer has not and will not change. It's about protecting an innocent life. That's the position. The baby is innocent. The person on death row isn't. Okay, the girl got raped. Don't punish the innocent baby for that. We'll help the innocent babies. There's foster care out there. There's adoption out there. And they'll even give you examples of people who have opened their homes to unwanted children. Abortion will still happen if you outlaw it? Okay. But if outlawing abortion saves just one innocent baby, and there it is, that's the issue. That's the answer. That is the answer. The answer will not change. There is not an issue like abortion. There is no movement. There has been no movement. There will be no movement. I heard the actor Sean Penn once say in an interview, there's no sense in me yelling at a guy who's paralyzed and sitting in a wheelchair to, come on, man, just stand up. Just stand up. No sense in doing that. Not that anyone's position, pro-life, pro-choice, on abortion is a disability, I'm saying it's just as futile as yelling at someone in a wheelchair because they're paralyzed to just stand up. Why can't you just do it? Just stand up. People have to recognize if you are passionately pro-choice, your passion is matched equally by the other side who is pro-life. And both sides are 150% convinced that they are right. I only say this not to take sides, but to point out, because I've been seeing for days now people on TV arguing passionately on both sides, but particularly people who are pro-choice arguing as if they feel like this is like any other issue, as if they feel like people can be convinced or swayed as they could be on guns or gay marriage or immigration. And I'm just pointing out the fact it's just not. It's just not like any other issue. So what do? Just stop arguing our point of view? No, not at all. Not at all. It's just about understanding here, and it's about learning the lesson. There's a lesson to be learned here. And the lesson is this answers that burning question that so many people have had. It gives you the answer. People ask the question, how could they? How could so many people vote for you-know-who? How can so many people ignore all of the fill-in-the-blank craziness? Now you know. Now you know. There was nothing Donald Trump could have done or said that would have outweighed the goal of appointing justices to the Supreme Court to overturn Roe. That's the end game. That's all that mattered. Nothing else. Nothing else mattered. Infidelity, accusations of sexual harassment, saying crazy things about the troops, saying crazy things about, I almost said minorities. I'm not supposed to say minorities anymore. Saying crazy things about smaller groups of people. I don't know what to say. Drawing lines with a Sharpie on weather maps. Nothing mattered. Nothing mattered more than the Supreme Court to a certain group of people. There was another group of people who were told it should matter to you. It should matter more than some of these other things that you're concerned about seem to matter to you, like what somebody said in the transcript to Wall Street. People were very concerned about that, what those transcripts said, and you were told, worry more about that Supreme Court than you worry about that. So that's the lesson. And don't be mad at me for pointing it out. Just learn the lesson. Understand what you're up against in this argument with people who are pro-life. No, we do. We understand it. No, you don't. No, you don't. Whenever I see people on TV having a conversation about how this may galvanize the base, this may help the Democrats going into the midterms, this is going to fire up the base, all you're doing is confirming to the pro-life people that you do indeed see the issue of abortion as a bargaining chip, like it's some sort of political game. That's what I saw a lot of from the left, from the left-leaning media in the days after this opinion was leaked. A lot of getting wrong what it meant, saying that it would make abortion illegal, but also a discussion about how's this going to help us? How is this leak coming from the Supreme Court going to help galvanize our base? Again, it just confirms what people think of pro-choice people and how they really feel about abortion. It's a bargaining chip. All that does is make the pro-life people plant their feet firmer on what they see as the higher ground. Now, to the pro-life people who see themselves on the higher ground, to them I say, be careful not to lose yourself in your righteousness. Be careful not to sacrifice your principles for what you see as the ultimate prize. Going back from a president who was elected not once, but twice by a majority of Americans being denied a Supreme Court pick in the last year in office. Then going to a president who was elected by a minority of Americans, I think I can use minority there, getting a Supreme Court pick in his final weeks in office. Then we go to Supreme Court nominees to appear to have outright lied in their confirmation hearings on their positions on overturning Roe versus Wade. This is not how democracy is supposed to work. Don't sacrifice your love for the Constitution and the rule of law and the symbolism of what it means to be an American to get what you want, no matter how just you believe your cause to be, a departure from what's right and what's wrong on one side opens the floodgates for both sides. Why should Joe Biden not respond by expanding the Supreme Court? If we're going to start to bend the rules to get what we want, wouldn't Joe Biden expanding the Supreme Court, packing the Supreme Court, just be another case of bending the rules to get what one side wants? Be careful. You of all people should know how the devil works. He gives you exactly what you want, but you got to give up everything that you love. Let me wrap up with the last segment being that I have to tell you, I have to have more confidence in myself. Yeah, I doubt myself on this show because I fear I will sound like a know-it-all. I don't want people to be turned off to the show by sounding like I'm lecturing people on how to live or constantly pointing out what's wrong. But that's exactly what everyone on social media does. It's exactly what everyone in the media does in some form or fashion. It's all opinion, all what's wrong with the other side. And what's wrong with the other side tends to change when one side or the other is in power. But all I'm doing is trying to open a little legitimate discussion that will hopefully lead to legitimate ideas that leads to legitimate solutions. I try to give clear-eyed opinions, and they're just opinions, but I try to base them on facts and my own understanding and my own experience. So over and over on this show, I criticize the left, particularly the progressive left, for some of its proposed spending policies. Over and over, I criticize the left for their attacks on Senators Manchin and Sinema. Over and over again, I said it's not necessarily the ideas in the policies that are bad. Some are needed. Some are good ideas. Cutting the cost of prescription drugs, paid family leave, universal pre-K, tax rebates for things like buying solar panels. All ideas I can get behind, and probably most moderates could get behind. I even called into a progressive talk show. Well, maybe a left-leaning talk show. It sounds a little progressive to me these days. But I called into a progressive talk show, and I wanted to make the statement that while I agree with some of the ideas, I had a problem, and my problem was it's the execution from the federal government that's at issue. And I got yelled at, screamed at, and hung up on. So I've been saying over and over on this show, it's not about the ideas, it's about the execution. So you can just imagine my total lack of surprise, not surprised at all, when I heard this last week on Bill Maher's show on HBO. Listen to this.
Let's start with what we spent, the checks the government sent out to get America through the pandemic. There was the Families First Coronavirus Response Act for $192 billion, the Payment Protection Program for $484 billion, the Consolidated Appropriations Act for $900 billion, the American Rescue Plan for $1.9 trillion, and the CARES Act for $2.2 trillion. Although for how much of that money actually made it into employees' pockets, they should have called it the Who Cares Act. Certainly, some large amount of spending was necessary to avert catastrophes like hospitals being overrun or falling into a depression. So we can argue another day if that 5.7 trill was the right amount. But for today, let's just look at what happened after the forever flu hit America, and Washington's answer was a mountain of money and a sign that said, "Come steal it." $872 billion went out to unemployment assistance. You know how much of it went to improper payments and fraud? Well, they don't have a solid figure. That would require accounting. But the low-end estimates are $163 billion in fraud. The Inspector General says it's likely higher than that, and ID.me, an insurance fraud prevention service, estimates the number is closer to $400 billion. That's almost half of it. In one instance, $2 million in unemployment checks got sent to one address. What was the job that guy was out of? In Arizona, scammers got nearly 30% of the benefits. And that's Arizona, where the most fiscally conservative, penny-pinching Republicans used to live. Republicans, at least used to pretend to be the mean old man who watched your money. But now, nobody from either party even pretends to. Palm Beach, Florida, which has 160 golf courses, got COVID money. What'd they do with it? They built a golf course. Several nonprofits overseen by an organization called Feeding Our Future got $65 million to feed needy children during the pandemic. But it was actually a massive fraud, and the FBI says almost none of this money was used to feed children. The Paycheck Protection Program, PPP, was designed to help small businesses pay their laid-off employees, but hundreds of loans went to fake farms in areas where farming isn't even done. You know that saying, don't have a cow? They literally didn't have a cow. The government sent $1.4 billion in stimulus payments to 1 million dead people. We gave billionaire Kanye West millions so he could continue making the world's ugliest shoes. Tom Brady's company got a PPP loan because you wouldn't want to have him touch his savings. Here in LA, lots of people actually do live in their car. So 6 years ago, we passed a bond program to provide housing for the homeless. A couple of months later, it came out that each unit would cost $350,000. And we were all shocked, because that's a lot of money to throw at a problem, even here in California. By 2020, the cost had risen to $531,000 per unit. Now, it's $837,000 for one unit. There's an old adage that government cannot transfer money except by means of a leaky bucket. And I get that. Some amount of leaking is inevitable. But when it's all holes, it's not a bucket anymore. What you got there is a handle. A January New York Times article about the effectiveness of the PPP program says, overall, the PPP was extremely inefficient. Only about a quarter of the money spent by the program paid wages that would have otherwise been lost. It didn't primarily go to workers who would have lost jobs. It was effectively a windfall for business owners, on the whole, a wealthy group. If I say, the government, they take our money and waste it, people say, you sound like a conservative. But again, I haven't changed. The hole to bucket ratio, that changed. Should I never notice that change to keep my progressive card? Should I stay supportive of government transfers of money until the percentage that's stolen is, unlimited? I guess these days these two are seen as the bad guys in their party because they looked at another multi-trillion-dollar spending bill and wondered if our government was up to the task of taking all that money and not just having it siphoned off by grifters and for bullshit. Would it surprise you that the $6 billion earmarked for carbon reduction in that bill doesn't actually mandate any carbon reduction? It will pay for new streetlights and bike trails, though.
When he says these two, he's referring to Sinema and Manchin, Senators Sinema and Manchin. You don't have to pay for HBO to hear it. I've been saying it for a year for free. And I apologize to Bill Maher for chopping up his New Rules segment. Again, if you want to go check it out, I'll give you the name of that one. It's New Rules, American Kleptocracy on YouTube. If you want to check out the whole thing, I do recommend it. But it's what I've been saying. It's what I've been saying for a year. The only difference is everything that Bill Maher said, I said about proposed spending. He's talking about the almost $6 trillion that had been spent on COVID because of the pandemic. I was saying the same thing was going to happen if we spent $3.5 trillion on social programs, another $2 trillion on an infrastructure bill. All the same things. I said, this is what's going to happen with the money. It's going to be wasted. It's going to be wasted because the government is not good. They're not efficient at things like that. I didn't need to wait for data to come back to tell me that. It's common sense. It's as predictable as the emotional hard luck contestant on American Idol. We all know it's coming. The sad music will start, and a contestant will tell everyone about the struggles they've been going through. It's what happens when government tries to solve everyone's problems by throwing money at the problems. The larger the amount of money, the more it's going to be wasted. It's common sense. And this is not about crapping on government. Government is very important. Government does tremendously important things every day that we don't even notice and we take for granted. This is not about crapping on government. It just simply doesn't work because there are too many moving parts. We have to understand a solution is not a solution if it creates another problem. If my kitchen faucet is leaking, I say, uh-oh, I'm wasting water. That's costing me money. I have to fix this. So I go with the grand, bold solution and shut off the water to the house. Problem solved. No more leaking kitchen faucet. But I created other problems. I can't flush the toilet or take a shower. How long do I let doo-doo spill out of the bowl before I admit this was not a good solution? I got to turn the water back on. Now let me be smarter this time. Let me be more targeted with my solution. I'll just turn off the water to the kitchen faucet. I still haven't solved the problem, but this is a better solution. And maybe that's all I can do until I can afford a permanent fix. It's a bit of a struggle, but I'm okay with a little struggle. I don't need the government to come up with some transformational legislation so I don't struggle at all, ever. No, some of it falls on me. It's my sink. But the government can help me by doing its job, by being smarter. You want to lower the cost for working families like me? Well, no one should have a $100 or $200 cable TV bill. If there are 2,500 internet providers in this country, I should have more than 2 to choose from in my area. The 3 credit reporting agencies should not determine how much I pay for everything from car insurance to a cell phone to a mortgage, especially when the way they determine my credit rating is suspicious at best. Your credit score is low. You don't have enough lines of credit. Okay, I'll get a new credit card. Your score went down because you just got a new credit card. You must be having financial problems. The places I buy a cheese steak or a pizza or get an oil change shouldn't be forced to charge me more because the banks that process their debit card transactions are constantly charging them more. And I don't think I should have to pay a $5 ATM fee to take out $20. You want to crack down on the banks? Start there. You want to save me money? Charge me less in property taxes. How? Stop giving tax breaks to companies to move to your city and create jobs. Yeah, we are a big corporation and we're going to move to your area and open up a new facility and create 5,000 jobs. Oh, you get a 10-year tax abatement. After 10 years and only 2,000 jobs created, not 5,000, they say thank you very much and move on to the next sucker city. Cut my property taxes and charge them some taxes. How about incentivizing them with a tax credit after they create the jobs they promised? Not a tax abatement before. You want to lower my cost? Is that what you want to do, Joe Biden? You want to lower the everyday cost for a struggling guy like myself? Well, how about every single person in government cut up your government-issued gas card? I'm paying enough for my own gas right now. I got to pay for yours too? This is the tax. Inflation is the tax. The tax that Joe Biden keeps telling us no one making less than $400,000 a year will have to pay. This is the tax. They tell us we're going to solve your problems with childcare, your problems with education, your problems with housing, your problems with health care, all by imposing a 15% minimum tax on any business making over $1 billion. Now raise your hands if you think the corporations will just say, well, I guess that's checkmate. I guess we just make less money now. Keep your hand up if you think that, because I want to send somebody to your house to take your picture so I can see what the stupidest person in the country looks like. Businesses will not just stand by and accept that tax. No, they'll transfer it down to us until they can get people elected that will remove the burden of that tax. No, I don't need your grand, bold ideas, your transformational ideas. Just do your jobs. Just do your jobs. Don't tell me, oh, no, all those things you mentioned. Oh, no, we've talked about it. We have been talking about it and we have been working on it. But, the other side, those Republicans, they're the party of no. They won't let us get anything done. I want to talk to Bill Belichick, coach of the Patriots, and I want to ask him, did Tom Brady ever come off to the field and say to you, I don't think we're going to be able to win this game. I don't think I'm going to be able to throw for any touchdowns. The defense is trying to stop me. I want to ask Coach Phil Jackson of the Bulls, did Michael Jordan ever come off the court and say, I don't think I'm going to be able to score any points today. They're double teaming me. The defense is trying to stop me. Figure it out. Do your job. That's why you got elected. You told us you were going to figure it out. You told us you were going to get it done. Don't tell me about how the other side is trying to stop you. Figure it out. Do your job. Be smarter than some guy doing a podcast. The inflation is not my fault. Some of it. Sure. Some of the inflation is due to Russia's invasion. After all, a lot of wheat does come from Ukraine. You want to know who exports more wheat than Ukraine? Canada. They export more wheat than Ukraine does. What do we import from Canada? Hockey players and some fossil fuels. That's the number one thing we import from Canada. Fossil fuels, not wheat. Maybe with all these supply chain issues, a trade deal like TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, wouldn't be such a bad idea. Canada was part of the TPP, along with Australia, another big wheat producer, Vietnam, an emerging market, New Zealand, Japan, and others. That agreement has been revised and renamed by 11 countries. U.S. isn't part of it. Now, it hasn't been ratified yet. Maybe we, the U.S., could be part of it, but you can't even say TPP. You can't even mention TPP in this country because somebody in our government told us that TPP is evil. And it wasn't Donald Trump. Donald Trump just jumped on the bandwagon. Donald Trump couldn't even spell TPP until Bernie Sanders started using it against Hillary Clinton. So no, when TPP gets ratified, it will be one of the largest trade agreements in the world. And the most powerful country in the world, the United States, will not be part of it. Nope, because that would be smart. Ooh. I gotta slow it down a bit. I got worked up at the end there, didn't I?
We're in the home stretch of the hard times.
Thanks for listening. Today's show was recorded on May 11th. I always forget to give the date. I had somebody say they think I'm trying to be an influencer. Imagine that. Yeah. I'm really trying to be an influencer. That's half the time I do this show, actually more than half the time I do this show, I forget to mention most of the places where you can find it. That's how much I'm trying to be an influencer. I constantly forget to mention Instagram. Hate being on Twitter. But I got to try and figure out how to get the show out there, I guess. I don't know. That's why I sure do appreciate the people who share it. I surely do. It's more and more people every time. Every time I do a show, there's more people. Sometimes people don't get to it right away, which I understand that. People got to live their lives. But most people usually make their way back to any episodes that they missed. I appreciate that. Please continue to share it. Tell people they can find it on Apple Podcast, on Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Podcast. Anywhere you get a podcast. Follow me on Twitter at @comparison_show. @comparison, little line at the bottom, little minus line at the bottom there, _show. Visit the website, www.thecomparisongroup.com. I gave you where I found the clips on YouTube. If anyone wants to ask me about those, just message me. Message me on Instagram, message me on Twitter. But I guess you can always go back and just kind of rewind back in the show and find out where those clips are, because I'm not going to post them. I'm trying not to post as much to the website because, like I said, I know people listen sometimes on their cell phones, and it just gets a little too crowded with all the sources and fact checks. I did take out some of the shows from the website. Some of my earlier shows I removed. You can still find those shows, the earlier shows, if you ever want to go back to the very first show on Apple, on Spotify, on all the other platforms, but not on the website. Thanks for listening. I will see you next time.